The sky turned the color of burning copper. Samuel Crawford pulled the reins of his old black horse, squinting toward the horizon where streaks of golden dust were rising. A sandstorm was coming, massive and thick. Like a curtain God was drawing down from the heavens. The road to Silver Ridge was just a few hours away, and the contract that could save the entire harvest season was waiting for his signature. But the wind had started to howl. Sand filled the sky, hissing past the brim of his hat and clawing at his face. Samuel leaned low, pressing himself into the saddle, urging the horse to run faster. There was nothing to see anymore, just red. Sand crept into his collar, choking every breath. The wind turned into a wail like the sound of his wife calling out in his dreams. The horse slipped on a broken piece of rock. The leather saddle creaked, then silence. Samuel's body was thrown off, tumbling down the sandy slope, his head slamming hard against the dry earth. The world tilted into a haze of dust. He caught a glimpse of the golden sky splitting in two before everything went black. When he opened his eyes, the storm was still howling. The wind flung his coat open, sand burying half his body. Samuel tried to crawl up, but something smaller, something warm, held his arm back. A tiny, sun-browned hand gripped his wrist, and through the red haze, 4 small figures appeared, thin, sun-darkened, their deep black eyes staring into his. In the heart of the desert storm, 4 Apache children had found him before death ever got the chance. The storm slowly drifted away, leaving behind a land torn and battered. The wind had calmed, but the air was still thick with the smell of hot dust. Samuel lay there, gasping for breath, his eyes half open, watching the flicker of firelight dancing across the rock walls. A small cave where those tiny hands had dragged him in during the heart of the storm. His coat had been spread over him like a blanket. An Apache dagger had been driven into the ground, holding down a piece of deer hide to block the wind. The 4 children sat around him, trembling, but steady. The oldest, Toma, about 14 years old, with a sun-hardened face and eyes far beyond his age. He was wrapping Samuel's hand with a strip of leather cloth. Beside him, Nira, a slender 12-year-old girl, was lighting a fire with dry cactus branches. Her movements quick and precise, like a tiny craftsman. Pekka, the 9-year-old boy, was trying to smile, catching drops of water falling from a rock and pouring them into a rusty tin can. And Wani, the youngest at 7, sat silent, clutching a cracked wooden doll, its only painted feature a single charcoal-drawn eye. Samuel tried to sit up, his voice hoarse. Where did you come from?" Toma glanced at him, eyes wary like a wild creature that had once been hunted. "Nowhere to come from," he said shortly. "Our parents are gone. Our village burned. We are walking toward the Sunday." Samuel looked around outside. The sky still blazed golden like fire. The storm had erased all traces of his horse and wagon. Without these children, he might have already been lying cold in the sand. "You saved me?" Pekka grinned, showing a chipped tooth. "Didn't save, just pulled you out. You were too heavy." The group let out a soft laugh, their giggles drifting through the dry wind like rare notes in the desert. Samuel reached into his coat, pulled out a few gold coins, his hands trembling as he held them out to Toma. "Take this, I want to pay you." Toma shook his head. "No," he said slowly, his voice firm. "We only helped because it was right. We will not take money, sir." That sentence stopped Samuel cold. He looked into those dark eyes glowing in the firelight. A real kind of light, one that did not need gold to shine. That night, Samuel could not sleep. Outside, the sand still flowed like waves. Inside the cave, the 4 children slept, curled up, holding on to one another. They had given him the spot closest to the fire, as if he were one of their own. He looked at their sun-browned faces, their dust-covered hands, and realized that he, a man who had everything, was the one most out of place in this cave of stone. As he closed his eyes, Toma's words echoed in his mind. "We only helped because it was right." Amidst the desert and all its harsh judgment, 4 Apache children had just taught Samuel Crawford a lesson he had never understood. Sometimes, kindness needs no reason. As the sun rose over the rocky ridge, its first light spilled into the cave, casting a warm glow across the dirt-streaked faces of the children. Samuel woke up, his body aching all over, but he was alive, thanks to them. Desert winds swept past the mouth of the cave, carrying with them the scent of warm earth and distant barley dust. "There is a village to the east," Toma said, fastening his knife back onto his belt. "We will take you there." Samuel watched them pack their belongings. A few strips of dried meat, a piece of deer hide, Wani's wooden doll, and a broken flute. Nothing else. No homeland, no one waiting. Just 4 small souls drifting across a vast desert. They walked through the morning, until the first wooden rooftops of the town of Dry Creek came into view. People stared as they passed, eyes full of suspicion and caution. A few muttered under their breath when they saw Apache children walking beside a well-dressed white man. Samuel could feel every one of those looks like knives in his back. He brought them to Street Mary's, a small convent on the edge of town. An elderly nun came out to greet them, her kind face darkening the moment she saw the children. "They are Apache children," Samuel replied. "I want to leave them here. At least so they'll have a roof and something to eat." The woman hesitated. "People around here, they do not take kindly, Mr. Crawford. The church is full, and Indian children are often turned away. I am sorry." Her words froze Samuel in place. He looked back, Toma clutching his sibling's hand, Nira with her head bowed, Wani holding tight to her doll, and Pekka staring up at him with eyes that held both hope and fear. He bit his lip and nodded. "I understand." They stayed one night, in a damp storage room behind the church. Samuel told the children to stay put. By morning. He would bring food and water. As he turned to leave, Wani tugged at his coat and softly asked, "Where are you going?" "I just need to file some papers." "I will come back." She nodded, but her round black eyes did not believe him. Samuel left the convent as the evening light faded. He held the reins of his horse, gazing toward Silver Ridge where the contract awaited his signature, and with it, the chance to save his farm. But the image of the 4 Apache children stayed with him. The strip of leather, the firelight, and the words, "We helped because it was right." He rode for a mile before he stopped. The horse let out a quiet whinny. Samuel took a deep breath and turned around. For the first time in many years, he did not follow reason, he followed what his heart told him. The sun was setting, pouring golden light over the desert. The horse turned back toward Dry Creek. Samuel Crawford had already signed the most important contract, a covenant of compassion. When Samuel returned to Dry Creek, the sun had just begun to rise. Mist clung softly to the roof of the small church, and the morning bell rang out distant and faint. He dismounted, his hands trembling not from the cold, but from the fear that he might be too late. The convent door was ajar. Inside, the storage room was empty. Only a few pieces of straw remained. Small footprints, and an old blanket. "They are gone," the old nun's voice echoed from the hallway. People would not allow them to stay. Some even threatened to call the police if they were seen around. Samuel froze, anger swelling. But his voice came out low and steady. "Which way did they go?" "Toward the desert." The older boy said he did not want to cause trouble. He said nothing more. He walked out, tightened the saddle, and rode straight toward the open land. By midday, under the scorching heat, he saw them 4 small figures walking in a line. The wind tossed their black hair. Their clothes were torn and ragged, but their steps remained steady. Samuel pulled his horse to a stop and called out, "Toma, Nira, Pekka, Wani." They turned, eyes wary and tired. Pekka stepped back. Nira pulled Wani behind her. Only Toma stood tall, his hand resting on the knife at his belt. Samuel dismounted without a word. He unfastened his saddlebag, pulled out bread and water, and placed them gently on the ground. The wind whipped through his coat, dust clinging to his beard, but his voice was calm and sincere. "You saved me from the storm. Now let me shelter you from the storm of life." No one spoke. The sand swirled around them, golden like the sea. Samuel took off his glove and removed the brass key hanging from his neck, the key to Double Eagle Ranch, and placed it in Toma's hand. "If you take this, it means my door is open to all 4 of you. Not as workers, not as fugitives. As family." Toma stared at him for a long time. The boy's eyes were those of a grown man, hardened by the world. But they trembled. Nira held her sister's hand. Pekka looked at her and gave a small nod. Finally, Toma tightened his grip on the key, his voice hoarse. "You will not send us away?" Samuel smiled a true smile. The first in many years. No, because I no longer want to live alone. That evening, they rode west together where red sunlight stretched long across the dusty trail. Ahead of them was Double Eagle Ranch, a home waiting to breathe again. And behind them, the old desert storm had finally gone quiet as if the sky itself had let out a gentle sigh. Thank you for being here. If this story brought back memories of red dusty afternoons and the sound of hoofbeats echoing in your heart, please subscribe to my channel so that every day we can sit together and I will tell you another tale from the Old West. Summer came early in Arizona. The land was dry, the wind was hot, and the sun scorched every wooden plank of the Double Eagle Ranch. But for the first time in years, the place echoed with laughter. The house, once silent for so long, now came alive with the sound of small feet racing across the porch. Wani hung red feathers along the fence, saying they would ward off bad spirits. Pekka snuck around painting horses with mud on the barn walls, nearly giving the old caretaker a heart attack when he saw a grinning earth stallion staring back at him. Samuel stood watching, saying nothing. He simply smiled, a soft light flickering in his eyes, the kind he thought had died with his late wife. Toma, the eldest, learned fast as if he had been born in a saddle. He taught Samuel how to tie Apache-style knots, how to find a hidden spring in the valley, and rode the old black horse like he understood its every breath. I can hear it breathing, Toma said. If you listen closely, father, you will know when it is tired. And for the first time, Samuel felt something loosen in his chest when someone called him father. Nira turned the old kitchen into a different world. She knew how to dry yucca fruit, how to mix cornmeal with mint leaves, filling the house with strange and beautiful scents. In the evenings, she placed wildflowers on the table and said, "So mother and father can see we are living well." Samuel nodded, not daring to ask which mother she meant. Each sunset, they sat together on the front steps. The wind carried the scent of dry grass and horse dust. Wani curled up in Samuel's lap, playing with his silver beard. Pekka held his broken flute, blowing crooked little notes that somehow felt joyful. Samuel often gazed out at the fields where Toma chased sunlight on horseback. Nira hung laundry, and the two little ones laughed around the well. He thought of the years he had spent alone, dinners with no voices, mornings with no one waiting, just cold walls. Until the four children arrived like a wind carrying life with it. One evening, he opened an old trunk and took out his wife's photograph. Next to it, he placed Wani's clumsy drawing of him, the black horse, and four small figures smiling in the middle of a storm. And he whispered softly, "Do you see, my love? That storm? It never took anything from us. It brought them to us. Outside, the sunset poured down in a copper-red hue, bathing the rooftop in golden light like a blessing. Double Eagle Ranch, once again, was a place someone could call home. On a late afternoon in early August, the sky changed color suddenly. Red clouds gathered in the west, and the wind began to whistle across the prairie. Samuel was checking the fence, and Toma had just led the horses back to the stable when the first grains of sand began to fall, small but sharp as needles. "Another storm?" Pekka asked, a hint of excitement in his voice. Toma looked up at the horizon. The color was exactly like the day they first met Samuel. Agabe, a quiet nod. "This one is bigger." Samuel turned his horse and shouted, "Get the little ones inside. Nira, lock the stable doors. Hurry." The wind roared. Red dirt rose like waves. The tin roof rattled. Dust swallowed the sky. Fence boards began to rip from the ground. Samuel tried to steady the horses, but they panicked, rearing and screaming. He was just about to rush out and rescue the herd when a small hand stopped him. "Toma." The boy's eyes were steady, his voice low and firm. "Father, let me go out. I know this wind better." Samuel froze. The word father hit him like lightning in a pitch-black night, silencing even the howling wind. His heart clenched and then burst open, so warm it brought tears to his eyes. He nodded, handed Toma the rope, and said softly, "Be careful, son." Together, they ran out into the storm. The wind pushed them sideways. Sand lashed their faces. Nira ran along the porch, holding the stable doors. Wani and Pekka crouched by the window, eyes wide with worry. The horses screamed in fear. Toma looped a rope around a post and pulled hard. Samuel leapt in to help. Sand covered their hair and coats. One horse nearly went down from the wind. Toma wrapped the rope around himself and held firm. Samuel dove in to brace the boy's back. "Hold tight," Samuel shouted. "I already am." Toma's voice roared back through the wind, strong as a desert drum. They stood their ground until the storm began to fade. Sand fell like dusty rain. The two of them collapsed to their knees, gasping for breath, covered in red earth. When Samuel looked up, the front door had swung open. Wani ran out first, throwing her arms around him. Pekka shouted with joy, and Nira stood on the porch, smiling through tears streaking down her dusty face. Samuel dropped onto the ground, exhaled deeply, then laughed. "Maybe I have never seen a storm as beautiful as this," he said, his voice hoarse. Toma gave a quiet smile. "That's because this time, you were not alone." Out there, the sky cleared. The sunset painted the ranch in deep red. And in that golden light, the Crawford family, 4 Apache children and a weathered Western man stood together, glowing through the dust, a living proof that no storm is stronger than the human heart. News travels faster than the wind. 2 days after the storm, all of Dry Creek had heard the same thing. Samuel Crawford, the owner of Double Eagle Ranch, once wealthy, stern, and a man who kept to himself, was now raising 4 Apache children in his own home. That morning, when he went to the market to buy rice and salt, people stepped back as he passed. A heavy-set man in a black cowboy hat sniffed and muttered, "He must have gone mad, letting those redskins eat under his roof." Another man laughed, "Just wait, they'll rob him blind and vanish." Samuel said nothing. He only spoke softly to the storekeeper. "Just charge me the usual." As he turned away, he caught Nira's eyes watching him from the wagon window. She had heard everything. Her lips were pressed tight, but her gaze remained calm, the kind of calm that comes from people who have suffered too much to still be surprised. That afternoon, when they returned to the ranch, the children were quiet. Samuel unloaded the goods, then spoke, his voice low, but warm. "People will say many things, but what matters is that we know who we are." Toma looked up. "Then who are we, Father?" Samuel smiled. "We are the ones who still stand together, even when the whole world turns its back." That night, the oil lamp in the house burned brighter than usual. Wani brought a new drawing, 5 people sitting around a dinner table, with wind and sand outside, but light and warmth inside. Samuel hung it right beside the photograph of his late wife. "This one is a prayer too," he whispered. The next morning, a delegation from town arrived. The old sheriff, a preacher, and a few townsfolk. They asked Samuel to hand the children over to the church, to avoid trouble. Samuel looked each one of them in the eye, then spoke slowly. "On the day of the storm, they saved my life. If you think I would hand them back to a world that once abandoned them, then you do not understand the gratitude of a Western man." No one replied. Only the wind answered, carrying the scent of dry earth and the distant sound of horses. The sheriff nodded and tipped his hat. "Maybe you're right. In this land, who saved? Who doesn't matter much, as long as we hold on to our humanity." As they rode away, Nira ran out to the porch and watched them go. "Father, will they come back?" Samuel gently brushed her hair. "They might. But next time, I will not need to say a word. They will see for themselves." The sun dipped low, painting the roof in molten red. Inside the kitchen, 4 Apache children were preparing supper. Samuel stood in the doorway, watching the smoke rise into the golden dusk, and thought, sometimes, God does not send miracles, he sends people. And maybe, that was the second chance he had been given. Toma led the way, his posture in the saddle as steady as a grown man. Nira rode with a bright smile, her black hair flying in the wind. Pekka played his crooked flute, the notes melting into the sound of hooves, while Wani held up her wooden doll and shouted with joy. The sight made Samuel's chest tighten, that gentle ache of overwhelming happiness, like a heart unaccustomed to holding so much. On the porch table, his wife's photo stood beside Wani's crayon, drawing a messy picture full of life. Between the two images, a small candle burned. Samuel watched the flame flicker in the breeze and whispered, "Do you see, Mary? We have laughter in this house again. I just never expected God would send it through a sandstorm and 4 Apache children." He walked along the fence line, touching the new boards Toma had just fixed. Each nail, each scratch in the dry wood told their story. No paper needed, no words, only the fact they were still here. By evening, they sat around the dinner table. Wani poured milk, Nira laid out the cornbread, Pekka told a story about playing his flute to the cows, and Toma asked, "Father, if there's another storm tomorrow, will we be afraid?" Samuel chuckled, his silver beard catching the light from the oil lamp. "No, son, because now I know storms don't come to destroy us. They come to stop us, so we can see what truly matters." Outside, the sunset painted the ranch in red. The wind moved through the grass, kicking up golden dust like soft smoke. Samuel stepped onto the porch, laid his hand on the railing, and watched the sky shift to a deep navy blue. He remembered the day he fell from his horse in the heart of the storm, when his hand was taken by a tiny, trembling one that refused to let go. If not for them, he would not be here now, to hear this laughter, to feel this house come alive again. "Sometimes, God does not change the desert," he said softly, his voice low as the breeze. "He just sends a few lost souls, to make it less lonely." Night fell. The porch light stayed on. Inside the wooden house, the children's laughter mixed with the wind, with the horses, with the sound of life returning. On this land once filled with dust and silence, there now stood a home where 5 hearts, from 2 different worlds, had learned how to love again. And as the final gust of wind gently closed the door, Samuel smiled, the kind of smile only a man who has walked through storms can wear. "Thank you, storm. Because of you, I found my way home." Among the dry land and harsh winds, kindness still grows quietly, like wild grass after the rain. People may lose their homes, their belongings, their hope, but with one small act of kindness, the whole world lights up again. Kindness needs no witness, because it is its own reward. In the West, they say, God does not send angels down. He sends people who know how to kneel and lift others up. And in that moment, people become their most beautiful. Thank you for allowing me to share this story with you. This is a new kind of content from the Wild West Storytelling channel, and I truly hope you will embrace it. If you enjoyed this story, leave a lot of number 8s in the comments so I know to keep creating even more stories like this one. And please, subscribe to the channel to support me. Thank you so much.